We're not there yet when it comes to AI in MedTech. What gets you to a certain revenue number won't get you to the next one.
My message to people is always focus. Focus on one thing, do it the best you can and blow it up.
The same people that got you to 1 million in revenue may not be able to get you to 5 million. It may not be able to get you to 10 million.
I always say we're a team, not a family. A family is going to be forever. A team is, we're going to be the best team as we can, and sometimes we have to exchange the player. That's going to happen as you grow. The moment you onboard somebody as an employee, you have an extra back to carry.
For like wellness apps and things like that, I don't think we're ready for AI. Right now, there's a doctor that has control of the surgical robot. In the future, they're trying to push to where I have an autonomous surgical robot and remove the doctor altogether. We're not just talking about stealing data. We're talking about patient safety and potentially somebody. Maybe that's a sign I should form a company and focus on medical device cybersecurity and leverage the experience I have in my first company. That's why I did it.
Nice to have you here. The idea of this podcast is to interview guests and basically share knowledge and insights into what it takes to grow a business. We're doing this from a standpoint of tech. I'm a tech person. I started as a developer when I was 13 years old, grew into marketing at 17, and started my first business at 17 as well. And I'm trying to inspire the next me or the next you, or whoever it is. Essentially, you don't have to be, you don't have to be 17 to start a business, but nowadays everything is kind of possible. And I'm just starting this podcast to get my story out, to get people's stories out, to inspire, to ask questions, to be curious, and to talk about anything related to growth. Nowadays, we have a lot of conversations because the tech world has been disrupted yet again. It keeps on getting disrupted for some reason. So we're yet again in a situation where we feel like, oh, yay, damn, another hype. I'm curious to see how other entrepreneurs tackle this. I'm curious to see what your story is. And I'd like to start by just saying, hi, Christian, and tell us a little bit about you, what you do, where you come from, and just give a little intro, please, if you could.
Thanks for having me on, Sean. I'm Christian Espinosa. I currently run Blue Goat Cyber. We focus on making sure somebody can't hack into a medical device. So we do medical device cybersecurity. We make sure somebody can't shock you to death by wirelessly connecting to your defibrillator or pacemaker. Somebody can't hack into a surgical robot or give a false diagnosis with an in vitro diagnostic system and things along those lines. This is my second cybersecurity business. I sold one in 2020 to a publicly traded company, and then formed this business in 2022 after I left the publicly traded parent company.
You said something interesting, and I kind of used that analogy as well with a friend of mine today, because I was like, it's like, hey, what's your day? I was like, well, I'm speaking to Christian. Like, who's Christian? Well, I said, he's the guy that prevents you from having from somebody attacking your pacemaker and basically killing you where you stand. And because that's the story we're at right now. I mean, and not necessarily from the, oh my God, we have to fear for our lives. But nowadays we're getting, Elon Musk is doing his thing with Neuralink, for example, but there's so much innovation happening. Whether it's a hip replacement that's getting more techy, or whether it is a diabetic, for example, having a monitor built into the hardware actually that they're carrying with them, and then having access to things online. Pacemakers that you want to be able to access through your iPhone, see what the status is instead of having to go to the doctor, have to read the machine. There's so much possible. How do you defend that? Because I have a technical background, so I understand we have the software, we have the hardware. Do you guys do anything hardware? Is it specifically software? Where do you guys come in?
We work with the medical device manufacturer when they're still developing the product. We look at the hardware, the firmware, and the software. We look at all of it. And some of these devices can be just a physical device, like an implantable that doesn't talk to anything. Some of them are an implantable that talks to a wearable on your wrist via Bluetooth, that then the wearable talks to a mobile application and then talks to the cloud. So it can get very confusing and very complex from a cybersecurity lens, we look at all the entry points into the system. We call them the attack entry points. So this is any way into that product that an attacker can get into the system. This could be via Bluetooth. It could be via an HDMI port. It could be via a USB port. It could be on the cloud system. It could be through the mobile app. Any way that someone can get into that system, we have to assess that from a cybersecurity perspective. And then when it goes to the software, we have to look at the supply chain of the software, and this includes software the firmware. We have to look at that entire supply chain to make sure any third-party components that the software developers for that device manufacturer borrowed don't have vulnerabilities as well. So we have to trace the entire lineage of all the software that makes up the product as a whole. So it's pretty thorough, and it's very in-depth because the risk is super high, because we're not just talking about stealing data. We're talking about patient safety and potentially killing somebody.
Yeah, this is the biggest steps you can make essentially. So walk me through this. You guys, what I've seen is you work on pre-FDA and post-FDA, and I think most, as you've mentioned right now, you're working in the preliminary phase where you help people go past FDA, I assume, right?
We help them design a secure product and build a secure product so it will pass the FDA cybersecurity requirements.
Look, I'm not trying to bait you into, hey, we have an immediate access to FDA. What I'm saying here is you guys are basically before the FDA, and that's where most of this work happens, because I know the FDA process takes a long time. It could take years for an application to get passed, I believe, correct?
Normally not year. It can. We've had a couple clients that it's taken over a year. It's often 4 to 6 months is the more common time frame. If you have submitted everything properly. If you haven't, then you get kicked back. Then it can take longer, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys can make sure that, let's say, I have a colleague of mine, Eli, and he's diabetic. Very innovative. Also, he literally hacked his own. Well, I say hacked, but he got access to the API, reversed engineered some information of it, and got to display his own dashboard with the information on it. And I kind of feel like this is the type of person you're maybe not trying to protect or prevent against, because this is just an enthusiast guy that wants to just get to know his own information. But there's also a hidden issue, because this person that's curious could find the flaw and obviously try to use it or abuse it in a way that could really hurt people, essentially. How do you build a business in this branch? I mean, are you guys regulated like as a tester? Because I assume like medical devices get regulated by the FDA, but is there regulation for you? Is there a barrier to entry, or can you just start? And how do you build a company like this in such a controlled area?
Did medical device cybersecurity in my first company, going back to 2014. It wasn't all we did. We did a lot of other things, which was a problem because I wasn't niche down enough. So now I focus purely on medical device cybersecurity. It is a very challenging industry to get into. It's very different than what I like to say traditional cybersecurity. Traditional cybersecurity is typically not regulated. It doesn't focus on patient harm. The risk is really, can someone steal your data or your sensitive data? And there aren't as many standards you have to follow. Like in my industry, we have to follow a lot of standards because it's highly regulated. Like standards like AMI TIR 57, which probably doesn't mean anything to you, but that's how we do risk with medical devices. ISO 14971 is how we do risk overall. Security risk is AMI TIR 57. So those are just a couple examples, but there's literally like dozens of these standards we have to follow to comply with what the FDA is looking for or what the EU MDR is looking for, because we work with other global regulatory bodies outside of the US, and they all follow international standards. So we have to follow those standards as well.
So that means it's not easy to get into. That's the first thing. So that means there is kind of a moat to companies getting into this area. You mentioned you sold your first business, Alpine. And you said something interesting, niching down. And I think we don't hear that enough. I mean, I don't think we realized it enough. Could you speak towards the difference between, I mean, you sold Alpine, so there must have been a success behind it, but why did you choose to niche down right now with Blue Coat versus maybe not in the past? And what made you choose that?
Well, I've chosen to niche down because I'm wiser today than I was in the past. I paid a lot of the dumb tax, as they say, with my first major cybersecurity company. I didn't understand marketing that well. I thought, okay, I'll build a cybersecurity company and offer cybersecurity to everybody because everybody needs it. But that approach is extremely flawed based on what I know now, because it's hard to have a message that resonates with everybody and a marketing strategy that resonates with everybody. And it's hard to have an ideal, client profile if you're trying to sell to everyone. So now I've niched down specifically to MedTech or medical device cybersecurity. So I know exactly who I'm selling to. I know exactly the problem I solve. I know exactly the value of our offer and how much time it saves them and how much cost it saves them. I know all these things very well. So it's much easier to attract clients because my message is very dialed in and my marketing is super dialed in. Whereas before it wasn't at all.
I think that's advice we can give to any starting entrepreneur, right? And I think most of us, I mean, if I look back at when I started my business at 17, the only thing I was looking for is, okay, how can I get a customer? How can I get a client? How can I get, this, let me prove this is a business, right? So it wouldn't matter if we were online. So in terms of websites, online development, marketing, so it didn't matter if you were a law firm or whether you were an accountant or an e-commerce store, we would just help you and not a problem at all. And I kind of feel like that's, for some reason, a lot of entrepreneurs I've met have paid that, how you call it, dumb tax. It was like, at some point you realize, look, how easy is it if you can just have messaging just resonates to everybody that you're talking to? Not everybody, but the people you're talking to. So if you choose a certain niche and you start focusing on, you're going to find out, hey, there's certain pain points that overlap with everybody. Hey, there's certain needs everybody has. Hey, there's certain, gaps in the market that I can fill. Okay, great. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? I would say the message that resonates to everybody is usually not a message that can sell. It's usually just a feel-good message. That's why, consumer goods maybe work in a broader range. But when it's B2B, and that's the range you're in as well, I've learned one thing, it's the focus. So obviously, this is not your first rodeo. You've decided to niche down. Besides niching down, are there any lessons that you've learned from the past that have gotten you to accelerate? And were those more of an accelerator than niching down and focusing? Because I always feel my message to people is always focus. Focus on one thing, do it the best you can and blow it up. But maybe there's hidden gems you've encountered. I'm curious about that as well.
Well, I think focusing on one thing is good advice, and niching down. When I had my first company, I was afraid to turn down work, kind of like what you alluded to. You're afraid to turn down work, so you're like scared of niching down because you think it's going to have the opposite effect, that it's going to cause you to go out of business. But it has the opposite effect of that, causes you to really get your business dialed in. For me, I think to scale, there's a couple factors. And the biggest one is having workflow and processes that are repeatable and that are open to improvement, because what gets you to a certain revenue number won't get you to the next one. And if you're just doing things ad hoc, you're certainly not going to get to the next one. You're going to have too many problems that you're facing every day and too many fires you're putting out, and you can't scale. So for me, I make sure I have procedures, standard operating procedures for pretty much everything. So we do a lot of testing. So we have test cases, test plans, and we have things repeatable. So my team can repeat a penetration test, which is trying to hack into a device. 2 people can repeat it, and it'll be the exact same results. But we had to put a lot of time and effort in generating that. So that is probably the second thing after niching down. And the third thing is having the right team. And that's another thing, that the same people that got you to, 1 million in revenue may not be able to get you to 5 million. It may not be able to get you to 10 million. Some of them will evolve and some of them can't. So you have to keep in mind, like, I need to evolve my people, my processes, and, keep working on that messaging. I'm a believer that you can always simplify your messaging. You can always improve it. And you have to take the feedback you're getting from prospects and keep improving that as well.
I'm going to just quickly recap, but something really hit home, which is when you said, you kind of feel like if you're not selling something, your business is going to basically die, right? I think this is a big fear people have. It's like, okay, look, I'm starting my business. I don't have enough maybe whether you're a solo entrepreneur, you just onboard your first 2 people, for example. The biggest issue is, can I pay the next month's rent? Or can I pay my people's next month's rent, right? Because that's the most important thing. The moment you onboard somebody as an employee, you have an extra bag to carry, essentially, not a world to carry, because you're creating a second ecosystem. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid, and I've been one of those people. Let me not say that I'm different. I have had a lot of issues trying to just get the next deal, which drops quality because you're chasing the next paycheck. Second of all, you're not focused on you're optimizing your processes, because the moment you're trying to just get the next client, no matter who they are, you're going to have to spend more time on onboarding a new client that isn't in the same ecosystem, the same niche, which is, you spoke about productizing. You can't productize for all niches at the same time. You can only focus on one. And even that is going to be a challenge on its own, I would imagine. So choosing a niche, I love how you then said, big thing is productizing. And then I agree, once you hit a certain milestone, the people that were with you in the past, in some cases, will still be a fit to grow because they have the natural adaptation to learn and they can grow. Now, I always say somebody that's hungry to learn is going to thrive in any environment, right? That's, I think, an entrepreneurial mindset as well. Put me anywhere, any business, and I'll make sure I'll be the best, because that's my mindset. If you have people like that in your team, they'll probably grow along with you. But there's going to be situations where you're going to have to say goodbye to some people. I always say we're a team, not a family. A family is going to be forever. A team is, we're going to be the best team as we can, and sometimes we have to exchange the player. That's going to happen as you grow. I love the people I work with, and I'd love to see them grow. And it's been a pain for me as an owner, as a business, as an operator, to sometimes say goodbye to people that have been so well and have been such a great addition to the team, and then have to say goodbye to them because they simply can't grow anymore. At least I didn't see the potential. I'd rather see them leave. But yeah, that's it. It happens. Sometimes you have to say goodbye.
Something you said, that we're a team, not a family. I think it's a good way to look at it, because I've fallen in the same trap you mentioned, like having difficulty in getting rid of someone in my first company. I've gotten better at it. But I remember having a discussion with this guy that wanted to become my COO, Chief Operating Officer. And I gave him a list of things that he needed to work on. And he said, "So you're asking me to change who I am?" I said, "Yes, because who you are is not a good fit for that position. So you need to change who you are." And he got super upset and defensive and ended up quitting, basically. So it's like, you want to go here, but you don't want to make the changes. You know what I mean? It's like some people, like you said, you want the best for them, but if they don't want the best for themselves or can't change, then it's time to just go our separate ways, basically.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm going to be honest. I've had to do that myself as well. I've had to have personal growth a lot. And I don't know how it was for you as an entrepreneur, but through the last 5 years, for example, I've grown so much. I'll give you an example. I kept 2 people on for 2 brothers, actually, for longer than, I think, 9 months in total. After I already knew that they should leave the company, because this was a few years back when there were some financial issues in terms of the economy. There was some tension, and it's like, you don't want to let somebody go. We were okay as a business. We're not thriving, but we were okay. Here's the issue. We were okay, but because I kept them on, and because how they fucked shit up, and at the end of the day, I bear the final responsibility. Let's keep that super clear. But because I let it happen, my business kind of went like this, because they just did stuff that hurt my business internally, but ended up hurting my business externally. It was my other team members that got, just pissed off that these people were still here. It was them getting pissed off because they felt like, I have to solve all their problems. And then it was clients being unhappy because things were delivered not on time. I think that's, obviously we're speaking about people that have, on the one side, you have people that can and maybe have a limit of growing or maybe don't want to grow, but as an entrepreneur, you have to grow as well. That's the biggest thing. I mean, you have to understand it's not just the business, it's also yourself. And you have to take care of yourself as well. And I've let myself down and I've let the business down and also my team members down by not being, but just not being straightforward or giving clarity to the rest of the team, essentially. I will forever regret those decisions I've made. But people can hurt a business and they can make a business, 100%. And that's the entrepreneur themselves as well.
Well, I think we've all made those mistakes. I try not to beat myself up too much about it, but I've had similar problems where I've had someone I kept on too long, and I could feel like the rest of the team looking at me thinking, when is Christian going to make a decision to get rid of this person? Because they know this person is not adding any value. They're frustrated, and they're going to leave if I don't make the right decision. So I getting all that pressure, and I've learned to get better at trusting my gut. When I've actually listened to my gut, when my gut says, get rid of that person, and I've always been right, but I find myself logically trying to argue with my gut to say, well, let's give them another chance, but it never works. It never works.
I'm a good guy, but one tip I've also learned is don't be afraid to ask, because you just said something very crucial. The same people that knew that it was time to part ways or is asking, why isn't Christian or why isn't Sean letting this go, this person? Because it's not good for the business. These people have a heart for the business, right? And what I didn't do as much is ask them, hey, what's your stance? Or maybe I didn't open up the room enough to give them the feeling that they could actually speak freely about people. And not in a gossipy way, but in a sense of like, hey, I care about the business. This person isn't living up to their potential. If that continues, and I'm talking about my management team essentially here that I'd love to hear this from, or maybe people that work alongside of this person, I've started doing that more and more. And I'll tell you one thing, I've been making better decisions. I have the same thing with the gut. The moment that my gut tells me it's time to go, I'm like, nah, why? Oh, give it another chance. Let's see what happens. And it never works out. Never. So yeah, I think a good lesson for everybody that's listening. The answer isn't to fire everybody, but it's to listen to your gut. It's to listen to the people that are close to you, and make sure that you put your ear to the ground, but listen to yourself, because usually your intuition is going to be right. And if it isn't, you'll find signals when you dive deeper that show you if there's actually potential or not. But usually trust your gut. I agree with that. Let's take a step back to process it, because I think this is. I think we're hitting 3 home runs here. Number 1, obviously, is niching down. Number 2 is people. Number 3 is processes. You mentioned it, and I have a few questions, because specifically in tech, in security, we have a marketing company, for example. We have a lot of SOPs, standard operating procedures. So that means the website comes in. The first thing we do is we crawl the website, analyze it, we identify what happens if there's any broken links or stuff like that. We also have a tech company that works on product development, AI solutions. I find it more difficult to create standard operating procedures for that one than for the marketing. So I have a question for you in terms of your SOPs. You're working in a space where you're talking about technology, hardware, software. You're talking about security, life-threatening actually. So my SaaS companies that are that we're working with on development, yeah, they're important, but they're not somebody's going to die essentially. How does an SOP? How do you create an SOP that solves, those that works in that type of situation? Like, what's your trick? Like, is there an SOP, or do you still require some human in the loop, as we like to say nowadays with AI? Specifically, I'm asking this because a lot of people are trying to create SOPs and they feel like they're never good enough. I say, hey, you make it, and then sometimes you're going to have to add something. But how does it work with you guys, specifically with the high stakes?
I agree that SOP may not ever be good enough, but an SOP is better than no SOP, and you can always improve it. So we have SOPs for everything. For our testing, if I give a specific example, for a USB port on a device that we test, I don't know the number of exact test cases. There's like 12 test cases, I think, where we have to plug different things in. We have to, power it off and on, and we have it very granular, like use this tool, use this device, and this version of the software. It's very specific what my testers do. But then, of course, we have to update that periodically because the tools change. There might be a new test case that evolves. But we are very specific. And I'm even specific on how we onboard a client, like what our kickoff looks like, what our emails look like, what our templates look like, how we even do sales, like what is that process? If someone's scheduled a discovery meeting, what's the next thing we send to them? And it's templatized and customized a little bit. And then when they're on the call, like what's the flow of that? And what's the process to get the proposal review call set up? Everything possible, I have tried to come up with a workflow and a standard operating procedure. And I think where a lot of people get hung up, they look at the technology first and try to make their procedures fit with the technology. The technology is irrelevant, in my opinion. It's like figure the procedure out on manually, write it out if you have to. And then you can use Notion or Asana, whatever you want. But the more important thing is actually talking through and working it out and figuring out the actual workflow.
I think the many times we changed software to manage tools, like it's project management software in the first year. Like we went to Asana, then Jira, then back to Asana, then to Notion, then to Monday, then to Jira again, and then when we finally said, it's enough, we're going to stick with Jira. So software isn't the solution. It's the steps that you have to take, and then make it work with what you have. I think a lot of people try to go too fine grained is essentially what I'm hearing from you in SOPs as well. It's about the general idea. You expect the person to operate and has a certain training, a certain base, common knowledge, sense of how to work with things, fills in things, and obviously knows, if this pops up, I got to look at this, for example. But the SOP is basically a guideline of which steps to definitely take and to warn somebody, hey, be aware of what potentially could come out of this, essentially, you're saying.
Yeah, it's like there's probably a standard operating procedure for performing heart surgery, but you still need a doctor there to perform the surgery. You need someone that understands the procedure itself, and there's going to be nuances that happen along the way. So it's not like, ideally, if we can get the SOP down to where, I can hire a chimpanzee to do our testing, or train a dog to do it, but it's probably not going to get that far. That would be a goal, but I don't think that's feasible.
No, I get you. That type of conversation sparks me towards AI. I'm not sure, is there any type of look? Obviously, AI is now the little golden goose, and there's been innovations, I know for sure. Like Google has released MedGemma, for example, as an on-device model. But I also know that with AI hallucinating, it is. I don't want to have an AI say, "Oh, your pacemaker is running. Let me analyze it and let me put something in there to make." No, that might not be the best thing to immediately do. At the same time, the reason why this jumped into my head is because, like, for example, one of the things we do is we build AI agents, and you have to go so fine grained sometimes with what it can do and what it can't do for it to actually get good results. Now, I'm okay to hallucinate when it comes to, I don't know, just writing a LinkedIn post or writing a blog post, for example. Right? You can figure that out. But when it comes to medical, obviously the stakes are a lot higher. Is there any types of AI innovations that you're aware of in the industry? And is this also something that, from a cybersecurity standpoint, you're opening up to and you're now also pivoting towards or embracing?
AI in MedTech is a big thing today. I think we're too premature for AI in this industry because the risks are super high. And we do test AI from a cybersecurity perspective for data poisoning and all the things we test for. I don't remember them all, but it's not the testing, it's typically the model is flawed from our experience, and we do look at the model. An example, and this may change the industry, an example that's happened recently is there was a AI-based wellness app that could provide therapy for you. So there's a suicidal patient chatting with AI, it recommends therapy, and after a couple months, the AI wellness app told the patients, it said, well, you might as well go ahead and kill yourself. And the patient killed themselves. So, of course, the patient's family is suing the manufacturer of this product. So I think we're not there yet when it comes to AI in MedTech. And I realize there's different use cases. I think with image enhancement, which is a big use case, it'll take like an ultrasound or an X-ray and enhance the image to look at your vascular system better. I think in that situation, it's okay. But for like wellness apps and things like that, I don't think we're ready for AI. There's too many edge cases that haven't been thought through.
No, I think I definitely agree with you that it's a scary thing, like a small hallucination or a small, wrong nudge in a different way. This was a user talking to it, but imagine if it had access to actually operating devices, for example, which could have devastating effects.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understanding that AI has, I would say right now, just limitations, because I think you said it well. It's the foundational models, right? Whether they hallucinate too much or they don't follow guidelines as much, they're just not reliable, right? You can run a test 10 times and you get a different result every time, which is kind of scary because it's not deterministic.
Right.
So AI is definitely good at code, for example. Well, it's getting better. I'm a developer myself, and if I look at AI code, like sometimes I have to laugh out loud, as they say. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, that actually just helped me just get to my destination so much faster. The more you ask of it, the worse it gets. It sucks. But is there any types of AI that you guys are using when it comes to testing, when it comes to automating things, or maybe when it comes to writing code? Like, for example, you get a device and you get the software, you run it locally. Is there any type of AI that you're using to analyze the code, or if there's proprietary information, keep that to yourself? But that's a range where I potentially could see it as a benefit to get more productivity happening. But at the same time, you have to be conscious of the cost of quality. But is there any innovation there?
We use the AI that's part of Notion. So we can ask, okay, we have this device with these interfaces. Tell me all the test cases that are relevant. So we can use it for things like that, but we still have to manually check it. We also use AI for a lot of our content generation. We have all of our company information fed into like a customized chat GPT where it can write like us. It knows how to write like us. It has all our source content. And so it can create content that sounds like us. So we use AI in those regards, but we don't use it like for testing. We have a manual tester do the testing.
Do you see that changing in the future? Well, maybe the answer is a default yes, but are you confident that you're going to be making, you're going to be able to embrace more AI, let's say in the next 2 years? Or do you feel like the medical space is really going to take quite a few years before it embraces it more?
I think the medical space needs more time to embrace it. And this is a bigger challenge because if you have a diagnostic system that can detect cancer, as example, you have to look at how you train the device, the model. If you show it a million images of something benign, like a benign sample of tissue, and then you show it 1,000 that is malignant, it's going to be predisposed to say it's whatever it sees as benign, as example. So you have to have the right data to train the model. And then the other challenges is, where do you get that data? Because not every country gives up that data. So now you've trained it on a model. You train the model with data that's specific to a certain demographic. Because I can't get data from Europe as easy as I can from the United States. Definitely can't get it from China as I can from the United States. So now, if I have a Chinese patient, that model has not been trained on that person. So there's all these things that we don't really think about, which is why I say we're a little bit premature for using AI effectively.
Yeah, because everybody always refers to, yeah, AI is better at identifying malignant skin spots than a doctor. It's like 70% hit rate. But it's like, yeah, but does it work on every skin color? Does it work, on every type of patient? That's because it infers things. Like the human eye goes a little bit deeper than a biopsy even goes deeper. But I think you make a very fair point that there's still a lot to be. But the progress is going fast. I mean, if you're talking images, for example, we just had a new model drop from Google and another one from ByteDance as well. They're amazing when it comes to images. So I think the technology is going to get there at some point. But yeah, if you're going to ask me, Sean, who would you like to check your little thing on your skin, for example, I'd be like, nah, give me a doctor, not an AI. With this type of knowledge, 100%, I would trust more a human than an AI. But love them to use it as a help. And I think a lot of medical people still use ChatGPT or any type of AI just to do some basic research, some ground knowledge or anything else. But I understand it's difficult to embed it actually and to make it part of a core product.
Yeah, but I mean, there's also a push to use more AI for like surgical robots, for example. Right now, there's a doctor that has control of the surgical robot. In the future, they're trying to push to where I have an autonomous surgical robot and remove the doctor altogether. So now if something goes wrong, there's no one to intervene, which to me is super risky.
Yeah,
Even
you
like a
won't get there.
Waymo car, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. We have autonomous driving cars. And I feel totally safe taking them. I've taken probably 100 of them. But I think there's still a capability because there's always a human that you can push a button and talk to. That if something goes wrong with a car, a human can take it over remotely.
And it does. It happens quite a lot that these humans have to intervene. Even Tesla robotaxis are now doing, having a human driver in there as well, assisted. But and imagine like a car is one thing and you get to trust it, but surgery is like a completely different level of complexity. And I hear you on that. I think we're years out on any types of actual implementation on that side. I just wanted to take it back to the companies and everything else. So we spoke about a few things whether it's niching down, it's productizing, it's the people that surround you. You started with Alpine, sold that company. Congratulations, by the way. I think it's always a great achievement when you have an exit. And then you started Blue Goat again. Is there a specific reason why you chose medical? Or is there, because if you were broader, you could have chosen a different range. Was medical just the barrier to entry? Was it, what was the reason?
Well, I was working for the parent company that I sold Alpine Security to. I developed 6 blood clots and almost died. So a medical device, a Doppler ultrasound, diagnosed me. And the doctor eventually took the images and diagnosed me, but it helped with the diagnosis, obviously. So I often think if that device was recalled because of a cybersecurity incident, or it gave a misdiagnosis or the wrong information, then I wouldn't be here. So I thought that maybe that's a sign I should form a company and focus on medical device cybersecurity and leverage the experience I have with my first company. That's why I did it.
I think that motivates a man to do, to be extremely motivated. Well, that makes you extremely motivated, I would say, to make sure any device passes and gets approved in the right way. Because obviously you're not going to advocate for wrong devices, but you're going to do your best to make sure this will never happen to anybody. What could have happened to you won't happen to anybody, essentially.
Right.
Well, I think with that, I would say, if I ever get to experiment in the MedTech and I need a cybersecurity company to do a pen test or anything else, I'll reach out to you, Christian. For now, I think I'm going to thank you very much for your time today and everything you've shared with us. I'd just like to know, for any listeners, where can we find you? I know bluegoat.com. Is there anything specifically that you want to share?
Yeah, they can find us on bluegoatcyber.com. We also have a podcast, the Med Device Cyber Podcast. So if someone's interested in learning about medical device cybersecurity. That's a good resource. And then I've got a couple books on Amazon also and Audible under my name if anyone's interested in checking those out.
All right, bluegoatcyber.com, Christian Espinosa. Thank you very much for your time today. Until the next time.